Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my commentary and analysis of A New Hope. We stopped at the part where Luke saw his dead caregivers, and now we cut to the TIE fighters flying towards the Death Star. We see Vader walking right behind Imperial guards toward the detention center. They open the door and enter the cell and see Princess Leia. Her face is filled with defiance, which slowly gives way to fear as a giant black torture droid approaches her with a large hypodermic needle. The door slides shut and the long cell block hallway appears peaceful, while the implication in the cell is quite the opposite. We cut back to Tatooine and see a large bonfire of Jawa bodies blazing in front of the sandcrawler as Ben and the droids finish burning the dead. Luke drives up in the speeder and Ben walks over to him. He says to Luke, "There's nothing you could have done, Luke. Had you been there, you'd have been killed too, and the droids would be in the hands of the Empire." Luke responds, "I want to come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing here for me now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father." Ben nods his head as he accepts the fact that he will become Luke's mentor. The land speeder zooms across the desert. They stop on a cliff and decide to overlook the Mos Eisley spaceport.
Mos Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
The real-world locations for Mos Eisley are mostly in Jerba, Tunisia, with the establishing shot on Dante's View and Death Valley looking toward Furnace Creek. We get some Womp Rats. Here is a ship from the EU called the Outrider, which is a ship owned by Dash Rendar, and he is a character from Shadows of the Empire, which I believe is the first Star Wars multimedia project that takes place in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. We see more of the city, and that is something that George talked about when it comes to the changes to Mos Eisley. Originally, Mos Eisley was a lot less lively and more deserted, and George was dissatisfied because he didn't feel like it had the proper vibe to it.
Mos Eisley was supposed to be a city, and I never really was able to shoot more than a couple of streets. I had a very, very limited set in Jerba where I shot this, and a very little bit of time to shoot it in. And so I had just a couple of shots of streets. It was really the same shot used a couple different times. I always wanted Mos Eisley to be a big spaceport, very exotic.
The speeder is stopped on a crowded street by several combat-hardened stormtroopers who look over the droids. A trooper questions Luke, "How long have you had these droids?" Luke responds, "About 3 or 4 seasons." Ben chimes in, "They're for sale if you want them." The trooper then asks for Luke's identification, but Ben does this.
You don't need to see his identification. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
Move along.
Move along.
The old Jedi mind trick he learned from Qui-Gon. This ship right here is called the Dowager Queen, and it is a colony ship from the planet Bestine 4 that crash-landed on the planet of Tatooine in 100 BBY. The speeder pulls up in front of a cantina on the outskirts of the spaceport. A Jawa runs up and begins to fondle the speeder. 3PO reacts to the Jawa saying, "I can't abide these Jawas. Disgusting creatures." As Luke gets out of the speeder, he shoos the Jawa away. He turns to Ben and says, "I can't understand how we got by those troops. I thought we were dead." Ben responds, "The Force can have a strong influence on the weak-minded. You will find it a powerful ally." Luke looks over at the cantina and states, "Do you really think we're going to find a pilot here that'll take us to Alderaan?" Ben says, "Well, most of the best freighter pirates can be found here. Only watch your step. This place can be a little rough." But Luke is confident as he says, "I'm ready for anything." Here we see a dewback making noises as they enter the cantina.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
This is where discrimination becomes a thing in Star Wars. As in the universe of Star Wars, droids are the ones that experience true discrimination.
The world has changed so much since the first Star Wars movie. How do you think the changes in the fights for racial justice will impact the Star Wars universe going forward?
I don't know. I mean, I've kind of lost control of Star Wars, so it's going off in a different path than what I intended. But the first 6 are very much mine and my philosophy.
And I think that philosophy sort of goes beyond any particular time, because it's based on history, it's based on philosophy, it's based on a lot of things. And you know, the first three basically tell you how a democracy turns into a dictatorship, and you end up with a tyrant, the emperor. It's a very important now, where we are now in our political history. The other part was that in there, it's like, I purposely, all of the various colors and shapes of the aliens and everything that live in that world, it's a normal situation. There's no real discrimination. The only discrimination is against robots. And we haven't really reached that period yet. And I'm sure the robots will be able to overcome it because they don't have the same feelings. But it really shows you, in terms of the way the politics are and the way things are, you know, how to fight those ideas. And a lot of it really has to do with overcoming fear.
Luke walks over to the bar and asks for a drink. We see some more aliens. These blue aliens are called Duros. Then we have a Lamproid on the left and a Basithip on the right. Then we have an Ithorian and a Stennis shifter. We see Ben talking with our favorite Wookiee, Chewbacca. And Aqualish tries to start a fight with Luke. Cornelius Evazan tells Luke that the creature doesn't like him and that he doesn't like him either, and has the death sentence in 12 systems. Luke says, "I'll be careful then." Cornelius turns him around and shouts, "You'll be dead!" Ben comes to Luke's defense and says, "This little one is not worth the effort. Now let me get you something." Ben goes over to help Luke up and tells him that Chewbacca is first meat on a ship that might suit their needs. Then we cut to the droids as they see troopers right outside the cantina, which is not good. Then we cut back to the cantina and see the all-Bith music band called Figrin Dion and the Modal Nodes. The music genre they play, and I'm not making this up, is called jizz. So yeah. Anyway, we get introduced to a new character.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system. Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon? It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
Han asks, "What's the cargo?" Ben responds, "Only passengers, myself, the boy, 2 droids, and no questions asked." Han is amused by Ben and says, "What is it, some kind of local trouble?" Ben responds, "Let's just say we like to avoid any Imperial entanglements." Han then says, "Well, that's the trick, isn't it? And it's going to cost you something extra. 10,000, all in advance." Luke is appalled and says, 10,000? We can almost buy our own ship for that. Han leans forward and says, "But who's going to fly it, kid? You?" Luke starts to get really frustrated and states, "You bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself. We don't have to sit here and listen." Ben calms him down and comes up with a good compromise as he says, "We can pay you 2,000 now, plus 15 when we reach Alderaan." Han is pleasantly shocked and says, 17. Ben nods his head in confirmation. Han ponders for a moment, then says,
Okay, you guys got yourselves a ship. We'll leave as soon as you're ready. Docking Bay 94.
94.
The troopers walk over, but Luke and Ben left just in the nick of time as we see only Han and Chewie. When the troopers leave, Han gets ecstatic about the deal as he says to Chewie, 17,000! Those guys must really be desperate. This could really save my neck. Get back to the ship and get her ready. We see Ben and Luke rush out of the cantina. Ben points out to Luke that they'll probably have to sell his speeder. Luke tells Ben that he is okay with that as he doesn't plan to come back to Tatooine. As Han is about to leave, Greedo, a Rodian, points a gun at him. Greedo speaks in the Rodian language, which derived from the real-world human language of Quechua, a language spoken by indigenous peoples in the Andes region of South America. He tells Han, "Going somewhere, Solo?" Han responds, yes, Greedo. As a matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss. Tell Jabba that I've got his money. Han sits down and Greedo sits across from him holding the gun on him. Greedo says, it's too late. You should have paid him when you had the chance. Jabba's put a price on your head, so large that every bounty hunter in the galaxy will be looking for you. I'm lucky I found you first. Han then says, yeah, but this time I got the money. Greedo responds, if you give it to me, I might forget I found you. Han tells him as he unlocks his holster, I don't have it with me. Tell Jabba, Greedo interrupts, saying, Jabba's through with you. He has no time for smugglers who drop their shipments at the first sign of an Imperial cruiser. Han replies as he takes his blaster out of his holster under the table, even I get bored sometimes. Do you think I had a choice? Greedo says, you can tell that to Jabba. He may only take your ship. Han states, over my dead body. Then Greedo responds, that's the idea. I've been looking forward to killing you for a long time. Then...
Yes, I bet you have.
Oh wait, sorry, I thought Han shot first. Here's what really happened.
Yes, I bet you have.
Let me know in the comments which is better. Han gets up and flips a coin to the bartender as he says, like a badass, sorry about the mess, and exits the cantina. We cut to the Death Star and see Vader talking with the generals. He comments about Leia, saying her resistance to the mind probe is considerable. It will be some time before we can extract any information from her. Admiral Motti interrupts the meeting, notifying them that the final checkout is complete and all systems are operational, and asks what course they should set. Tarkin gets an idea. Referring to Leia, he states, perhaps she would respond to an alternative form of persuasion. Vader asks, what do you mean? Tarkin responds, I think it is time we demonstrate the full power of this station. Tarkin looks directly at Motti and orders him to set course for Alderaan. Motti replies, with pleasure. We cut to Tatooine and see R2 and 3PO hiding from the Empire. The door closes as the stormtroopers survey the area. One stormtrooper knocks on the door and tells them the door is locked, and they move on. When the stormtroopers leave the area, the door opens and the droids have their banter.
I would much rather have gone with Master Luke than stay here with you. I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. You watch your language.
Ben and Luke are standing in a sleazy used speeder lot, talking with a tall, grotesque Bavarian used speed dealer named Wyosle. Strange, exotic bodies pass by as the Bavarian concludes the sale by giving Luke some coins. Luke is disappointed as he says, look at this. Ever since the XP-38 came out, they're just not in demand. But Ben reassures him, saying it will be enough. As they head over to Docking Bay 94, we see a suspicious, darkly clad creature move out of the shadows, following them. Jabba the Hutt and grisly alien pirates stand in the middle of the docking bay. Jabba shouts, "Coming out, Solo!" A voice from directly behind the pirates startles them, and they turn around to see Han Solo and the giant Wookiee Chewbacca. Han continues, "I've been waiting for you." Jabba replies in Huttese, "I expected you would be." Han responds, "You didn't think I was gonna run, did you?" Han walks towards Jabba and Jabba says to him, "Han, my boy, there are times when you disappoint me. Why haven't you paid me? And why did you have to fry poor Greedo?" Han responds, "Look, Jabba, next time you want to come to me, you see me yourself, not some one of these twerps." Jabba walks with him and says, "Han, I can't make exceptions. What if everyone who smuggled for me dropped their cargo at the first sign of an Imperial starship? It's not good business." Han turns to Jabba fiercely and says, "Look, Jabba, even I get bored sometimes. You think I had a choice? But I got a nice, easy charter now, and I can pay you back, plus a little extra. I just need some more time." Jabba responds, "Han, my boy, you're the best." So for an extra 20%, Han interrupts, 15, Jabba, don't push it." Jabba says, "Okay, 15%. But if you fail me again, I'll put a price on your head so big you won't be able to go near a civilized system." Han looks at him right before he enters the Millennium Falcon and says, "Jabba, you're a wonderful human being," then enters the ship. We also see the great Boba Fett looking right at the camera. We cut to Ben and Luke entering Docking Bay 94. The creature that has been spying on them is a Kubaz named Garindin. He speaks into a small transmitter, letting the stormtroopers know where they are. They arrive and see the legendary Millennium Falcon, but Luke is not impressed.
What a piece of junk!
Han tells him she'll make 0.5 beyond the light speed. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid. And I've made a lot of special modifications myself. But we're in a little rush, so if you'll just get on board, we'll get out of here. Chewbacca gets everything set up in the cockpit. R2 and 3PO pass by Han, and as they do, 3PO says to Han, "Hello, sir." And you can already tell that Han doesn't like him by the look on his face. We see the stormtroopers marching and meet up with Garindin, and he points to where Luke and Ben went. They rush over there, and the commander tells his troops to load their weapons.
Stop that ship! Blast them!
Han notices an Imperial cruiser and tells Chewie to hold them off and angle the deflector shield while he makes the calculations for the jump to lightspeed. We see 2 Imperial starships chase after the Falcon. Luke and Ben make their way into the cramped cockpit where Han continues his calculation. Luke begins to speak frantically. "Why don't you outrun them? I thought you said this thing was fast." Han gets offended. "Watch your mouth, kid. You're going to find yourself floating home. We'll be safe enough once we make the jump to hyperspace. Besides, I know a few maneuvers. We'll lose them." The Imperial ship starts firing at them, and Han loves it as he says,
"Where the fun begins."
Ben asks, "How long before you can make the jump to lightspeed?" "It'll take a few moments to get the coordinates from the Navi computer." Luke gets frustrated, saying, "Are you kidding? At the rate they're gaining," Han says to him, "traveling through hyperspace isn't like dusting crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we could fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova, and that'll end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?" Now this is important to note, as this makes it clear as to how hyperspace works. You have to have proper calculations. You can't just skip around and be reckless. The ship is now constantly battered with laser fire as a red warning light begins to flash. Luke notices it, but Han slaps it out of the way and states, "We're losing our deflector shield. Go strap yourself in. I'm going to make the jump to lightspeed." We cut to Alderaan looming behind the Death Star. We see Tarkin looking at the planet. Princess Leia enters the scene and says to him, "Governor Tarkin, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board." Tarkin chuckles as he says, "Charming to the last. You don't know how hard I found it signing the order to terminate your life." Leia responds, "I'm surprised you had the courage to take the responsibility yourself." Tarkin says, "Princess Leia, before your execution, I would like you to be my guest at a ceremony that will make this battle station operational. No star system will dare oppose the Emperor now." Leia continues the banter, saying, "The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers." Tarkin speaks sternly, "Not after we demonstrate the power of this station. In a way, you have determined the choice of the planet that will be destroyed first. Since you are reluctant to provide us with the location of the rebel base, I have chosen to test this station's destructive power on your home planet of Alderaan." Leia gets frightened and starts to beg Tarkin, saying, "No! Alderaan is peaceful. We have no weapons. You can't possibly..." Tarkin interrupts, "You would prefer another target, a military target? Then name the system." Tarkin menacingly walks toward Leia. "I grow tired of asking this, so it will be the last time. Where is the rebel base?" Leia looks directly at her home planet and tells Tarkin that the rebel base is on Dantooine. Tarkin is pleased and says to Vader, "There, you see, Lord Vader? She can be reasonable." Then turns to Monty and tells him to continue the operation. Leia is horrified. Tarkin says to her, "You're far too trusting. Dantooine is too remote to make an effective demonstration. But don't worry, we will deal with your rebel friends soon enough." There is an intercut of the destruction of Alderaan to Ben, suddenly turning away and sitting down. He seems almost faint. Luke asks, "What's wrong?"
I felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
As Ben tries to deal with this dilemma, he tells Luke to continue with his exercises. Han enters the room and announces, "Well, you can forget your troubles with those Imperial slugs. I told you I'd outrun them." Ben and Luke ignore him, and Luke continues his Jedi training. Han mutters sarcastically, "Don't everyone thank me at once." 3PO watches Chewbacca and R2, who are engrossed in a game called Dejarik, in which three-dimensional holographic figures move along a chess-type board. Han continues saying, "Anyway, we should be at Alderaan about 200 hours. We see R2 and Chewie being real competitive.
He made a fair move. Screaming about it can't help you.
Han overhears 3PO patronizing Chewie and says, "Let him have it. It's not wise to upset a Wookiee." But 3PO responds, "But sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid." And Han points out to him that's because droids don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. And Chewie does a slick back gesture.
Wookiees are known to do that.
I see your point, sir. I suggest a new strategy, R2. Let the Wookiee win.
Luke practices his saber skills with a Marksman H combat remote droid. Ben gives Luke some advice saying, "Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through him." Luke asks, "You mean it controls your actions?" Ben responds, "Partially, but it also obeys your commands." The remote hits Luke in the leg and causes Han to laugh and says, "Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid." Luke turns off the lightsaber and says to Han, "You don't believe in the Force, do you?" Han responds, "Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny." Ben smiles quietly. Han continues, "It's all a lot of simple tricks and nonsense." Ben begins to say, "I suggest you try again, Luke." Ben places a large helmet on Luke's head which covers his eyes. Ben continues, "This time let go of your conscious self and act on instinct." Luke states, "With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?" Ben responds, "Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them." Luke waves the lightsaber around, trying to follow the remote, but the remote hits him on the side. Ben tells him to stretch out his feelings. Han reacts saying, "I call it luck." Ben responds, "In my experience, there's no such thing as luck." Han responds back, "Look, good against remotes, it's one thing. Good against the living, that's something else." Han notices a small light flashing on the far side of the control panel and reports that they're coming up on Alderaan, and Han and Chewie head toward the cockpit. Luke walks up to Ben and says,
"I could almost see the remote."
That's good. You've taken your first step into a larger world.
We cut to the Death Star conference room and see Imperial Officer Cass standing before Governor Tarkin and Vader. He reports that the scout troops that reached Dantooine found the remains of a rebel base, but they estimate that it has been deserted for some time and are now conducting an extensive search of the surrounding systems. Tarkin reacts to the news and says to Vader, "She lied. She lied to us." Vader responds, "I told you she would never consciously betray the rebellion." Then Tarkin goes,
"Terminate her, immediately."
We cut to the Millennium Falcon suddenly shaking violently as asteroids begin to race toward them, battering the sides of the ship. Luke and Ben enter the cockpit and ask what's going on. Han tells them that their position is correct, but no Alderaan. Luke is confused as he says, "What do you mean? Where is it?" Han responds, "That's what I'm trying to tell you, kid. It ain't there. It's been totally blown away." Luke is shocked. "What? How?" Ben chimes in saying, "Destroyed by the Empire." Han responds, the entire Starfleet couldn't destroy the whole planet and take 1,000 ships with more firepower than I've... A signal starts flashing. Han reports that there's another ship coming in. Turns out to be an Imperial fighter. Luke thinks it followed them, but Ben corrects him, telling him that it's a short-range fighter. Han comments, "There aren't any bases around here. Where did it come from?" The fighter races past the Corellian ship. Luke states, "It sure is leaving in a big hurry. If they identify us, we're in big trouble." Han chimes in, "Not if I can help it. Chewie, jam its transmissions." Ben suggests they let it go, but Han kind of dismisses him. Ben then says, "A fighter that size couldn't get this deep into space on its own." Luke adds, "It must have gotten lost, been part of a convoy or something." Han says, "Well, he ain't going to be around long enough to tell anyone about us." The Falcon starts to catch up to the fighter, but it seems to be heading towards something.
Look at him, he's heading for that small moon.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
It's too big to be a space station.
Ben tells Han to turn the ship around. Han agrees and tells Chewie to lock in the auxiliary power to try and do a full reverse. But they still are moving towards the battle station, and Han informs him that they are caught in a tractor beam and that there's nothing he can do, so he has to shut the ship down. Ben states, "You can't win, but there are alternatives to fighting." And we get a great shot of the Millennium Falcon entering the Death Star. The Imperial officer directs the troops to go to their stations. A line of stormtroopers march toward the Falcon and contact Tarkin. Vader reacts to this report, saying they must be trying to return the stolen plans to the princess. She may yet be of some use to us. Then it cuts to Vader walking towards the ship. An Imperial officer reports to Vader that nobody's on board, and according to the log, the crew abandoned ship right after takeoff. In addition, he believes it must be a decoy and that several of the escape pods have been jettisoned. Vader asks, "Did you find any droids?" The officer replies, "No, sir. If there were any on board, they must have also jettisoned." Vader then orders him to send a scanning crew and have them check every part of the ship. Then the Force starts to speak to Vader.
I sense something. A presence I've not felt since...
And he is referring to Mustafar. Simple as that. 2 troopers surveyed the ship, but found nothing. 2 floor panels suddenly pop up, revealing Han Solo and Luke. Ben Kenobi sticks his head out. Luke begins to say, "Boy, it's lucky you had these compartments." Han replies, "I use them for smuggling. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself in them. This is ridiculous. Even I could take off. I'd never get past the tractor beam." Ben says, "Leave that to me." Han responds, "Damn fool, I knew that you were going to say that." Ben then states,
Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows it?
The crewmen arrive with a box that is meant to scan the ship. The stormtrooper tells them, "The ship's all yours. If the scanners pick up anything, report it immediately." The crewmen then enter the ship, but...
Hey down there! Could you give us a hand with this?
A gantry officer named Pol Tridum speaks into the comlink. "TK-421, why aren't you at your post?" "TK-421, do you copy?" He then walks over to look out the window. A stormtrooper walks down the ramp of the ship and starts hitting the side of his helmet, indicating his comlink isn't working. The officer nods his head in understanding, then tells his aide, "Take over, we've got a bad transmitter. I'll see what I can do." As he approaches the door, when Luke enters, he talks to Han, frustrated as he says, "You know, between his howling and your blasting everything in sight, it's a wonder the whole station doesn't know we're here." Han responds, "Bring them on. I prefer a straight fight to all this sneaking around." R2 starts to chirp, and 3PO reports that they found the computer outlet. Ben tells R2 to plug in and interpret the Imperial computer network. R2 punches his claw arm into the computer socket, and the vast Imperial brain network comes to life, feeding information to the little robot. After a few moments, he beeps something. 3PO translates. He says he's found the main computer to power the tractor beam that's holding the ship here. He'll try to make the precise location appear on the monitor. We see the computer monitor flashing readouts. 3PO states the tractor beam is coupled to the main reactor in 7 locations. A power loss at one of the terminals will allow the ship to leave. Ben studies the data on the monitor and states, "I don't think you boys can help. I must go alone." Han appears to be okay with it as he says, "Whatever you say, I've done more than I bargained for on this trip already." Luke, however, urges to go with him, but Ben tells him to stay and look after the droids, and that they must be delivered safely or other star system will suffer the same fate as Alderaan. He then tells him his destiny lies along a different path than his, and then greets him farewell.
The Force will be with you, always.
Chewbacca barks a comment, and Han shakes his head in agreement and states, "Boy, you said it, Chewie." Han looks at Luke. "Where did you dig up that old fossil?" Luke gets defensive. "Ben is a great man." Han says, "Yeah, great at getting us into trouble." Luke responds, "I didn't hear you give any ideas." Han responds, "Well, anything would be better than just hanging around waiting for him to pick us up." Luke raises his voice, "Who do you think?" Suddenly, R2 begins to whistle and beep. Luke goes over to him and says, "What is it?" 3PO translates, "I'm afraid I'm not quite sure, sir." He says, "I found her." Luke walks over to R2 and asks, Who? Who has he found?" R2 whistles a frantic reply and says, via 3PO, "Princess Leia." Luke is shocked. "Princess? She's here?" Han chimes in, "Princess? What's going on?" R2 tries to find where she is and says, via 3PO, "Level 5, detention block AA-23. I'm afraid she's scheduled to be terminated." Luke is horrified and says, We gotta do something. Han is not liking this idea as he says, "What are you talking about?" Luke responds frantically, "The droid belongs to her. She's the one in the message. We've gotta help her." Han then says, "Now look, don't get any funny ideas. The old man wants us to wait right here." Luke responds, "But he didn't know she was here," then turns to 3PO and R2 and says to them, "Look, will you just find a way back into the detention block?" Han sits down and says, "I'm not going anywhere." Luke says to him, "They're going to execute her. Look, a few minutes ago you said you didn't want to just wait here to be captured. Now all you want to do is stay?" Han responds, "Marching into the detention area is not what I had in mind." "But they're going to kill her," Luke says. "Better her than me," Han says. Luke gets annoyed but tries to think of something to convince him. Once he found it, he says to him, "She's rich." Han starts to be interested as he says, "Rich?" Luke continues, "Yes, rich, powerful. Listen, if you were to rescue her, the reward would be..." Luke pauses and Han says impatiently, "What?" And Luke says, "Well, more wealth than you can imagine." Han responds, "I don't know, I can imagine quite a bit." Luke then says, "You'll get it." "I better." "Alright, kid. But you better be right about this," Han says, then asks about the plan. Luke starts to look around and tells 3PO to hand him binders and tries to put it on Chewie, but Chewie gets upset and growls at Luke. Luke then tells Han to put it on him. Han tells Chewie, "Don't worry, Chewie, I think I know what he has in mind." Then 3PO says,
Master Luke, sir, pardon me for asking, but what should R2 and I do if we're discovered here?
Lock the door.
And hope they don't have blasters.
Han and Luke try to look inconspicuous in their armored suits as they wait for an elevator to arrive. The elevator arrives and they're able to enter. We see Ben sneaking around, making sure no one notices him. Then there's an intercut to Vader as he seems to sense the presence of his old master. We cut to Han and Luke bantering about the plan.
This is not gonna work.
Why didn't you say so before?
I did say so before.
Elevator doors open. A tall, grim-looking officer looks at the trio suspiciously and asks, "Where are you taking this thing?" Luke responds, "Prisoner transfer from cell block 1138. This is a reference to THX 1138. The officer responds questioningly, "I wasn't notified. I'll have to clear it." He then waves over the guards to take Chewie, but...
Look out, he's loose! There's a little guard! I'll get him! Look out!
Han rushes to the comlink system and quickly checks the computer readout. He says to Luke, "We've got to find out which cell this princess of yours is in. Here it is, cell 2187. You go get her, I'll hold them here." And 2187 is a reference to a short film called 2187 created by Arthur Lipset. Luke races down one of the cell corridors. Han speaks into the buzzing comlink.
Everything's under control, situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction. Boring conversation anyway.
Luke, we're gonna have company!
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue.
We cut to Vader talking with Tarkin as Vader says, referring to Kenobi, "He is here." Tarkin responds, "Obi-Wan Kenobi? What makes you think so?" Vader says, "A tremor in the Force. The last time I felt it was in the presence of my old master." "Surely he must be dead by now," Tarkin says. "Don't underestimate the power of the Force," Vader retorts. Tarkin continues, "The Jedi are extinct. Their fire has gone out of the universe. You, my friend, are all that's left of their religion." There is a quiet buzz on the comlink, and Tarkin walks over and answers it. The intercom voice states, "Governor Tarkin, we have an emergency alert in detention block AA-23. Tarkin starts to worry as he says, "The princess? Put all sections on alert." This makes Vader even more confident that Obi-Wan is there. Tarkin says to him, "If you're right, you must not be allowed to escape." Vader responds, "Escape is not his plan. I must face him alone." Then it intercuts to Obi-Wan, suggesting that Obi-Wan is looking for Vader. We cut to the detention area, and Chewie starts to growl as Imperial troops begin to force their way inside.
Get behind me! Get behind me!
Can't get out that way.
This is on rescue. You came in here, didn't you have a plan for getting out?
Well, I didn't. Get in there!
And that is the end of part 2 of A New Hope. Stay tuned for part 3, and please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And may the Force be with you.